It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc Toth. In an era of chaos, confusion, and craziness, Ferenc is a voice for common sense. As a financial literacy educator, speaker, and entrepreneur, Ferenc cuts through the noise to help us understand how current events affect our money, economy, and our freedom. Now, here's Ferenc Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ferenc. If you want to reach me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com or the Your Personal Bank app. Yes, you will reach me at yourpersonalbank.com. If you go to the website, you'll also see my email. It's my first name, Ferenc, at yourpersonalbank.com, and that's spelled F-E-R-E-N-C. C as in cat, no E on the end. So again, it's Ferenc, F-E-R-E-N-C, at yourpersonalbank.com. I want to share some thoughts. I had a conversation with my wife, in fact, last night. I've had this conversation with a number of clients also, and it's some thoughts about the current Iran war, how I think it's going to affect us economically and that type of thing. And the first thing I should share is initially, I was against it. And as I thought about it for a little bit, I realized this was a knee-jerk reaction to the forever wars that our country has had. Yeah, when you hear about a Middle Eastern war, you think, oh my gosh, here we go again. But as I thought about it further, I've come to support it. And here's why. First of all, like or hate Trump, we all have to agree he's different than previous presidents. He's different than a lot of people. Previous engagements, pretty much all of them since World War II, our military has had limited engagements. So they're limited on their material and men, what they have, they can use. There's been rules of engagement which restrict our military, make it more difficult to do their job. Oftentimes, we've had leaders announce in advance what our limits are, like no boots on the ground, for example. And frankly, that helps our enemy. And I know there's some that are upset because Trump won't state what our limits are. And as he points out, I'm not going to tell our enemy. That's stupid. It helps them. And I agree with that. If you're going to go to war, you should have no limits. You're there to win, period. Secondly, Iran is the number one sponsor of terrorism in the world. Trump ran on starting no new wars. I agree with the fact that he's not starting this war, he's actually ending it. Iran has been on a war footing with the United States since 1979. They've chanted death to America. This is not an overstatement. It's what they really believe. And the official position of the United States and many, many other governments for decades has been Iran cannot, under any circumstances, obtain a nuclear weapon. Countries that have nuclear weapons are based on mutually assured destruction. The religious beliefs of the clerics of Iran don't have that. In fact, they would be considered martyrs if they attacked the U.S. or Israel. They would be happy to do that and die in the process. Anyone who thinks that if Iran had a nuclear weapon and wouldn't use it is delusional, in my opinion. It's come to surface that recent negotiation with Iran representatives and the U.S. stated that they had enough uranium enriched to build 11 nuclear bombs. This is after bombing their nuclear facilities last year. They've also significantly increased their missile production. Iran learned from that, and their goal was to build so many missiles as a shield, this would protect their nuclear program, so that if somebody did attack them or try to take out their nuclear ambitions, they would have so many missiles, it would be true devastation around the Middle East and probably Europe and other places, and Israel. Another little noticed fact is Iran's been producing many of the drones that Russia uses in the Ukrainian war. So the fact that they're unable to do that anymore now is actually hurting Russia's efforts. Trump has been adamant about wanting that war to stop. The attack on Iran is not just about Iran. It's really about China and oil. China's main allies for oil have been Venezuela and Iran. By taking out Maduro, we're now on much better diplomatic relations. We have control of Venezuelan oil, which hurts China. And Iran now, of course, is not able to send oil to China. And to fight a war, you need oil, so that weakens China militarily. Also, the Strait of Hormuz, which is controlled by Iran. About 20% of the world's oil goes through that strait. And for decades, Iran has been able to hold the world, economically speaking, a gun to their head, so to speak. In fact, do you know that the average cost of a barrel of oil that has to pass through the Straits of Hormuz is increased by about $20 to $25 just for the cost of insurance? So if the United States gains control of the Straits of Hormuz, or at least gets Iran, prevents them from threatening it, the average cost of oil per barrel could drop $20, $25. Well, that would have a massive economic impact in a positive way and reduce inflation worldwide, not just the United States. Another reason I've gradually become more in favor of this war against Iran is it does strengthen the dollar as the world reserve currency and weakens the BRICS. You see, again, China, without Venezuelan and Iranian oil, they're now forced to purchase more oil on the world market, and they have to purchase them in U.S. dollars. And that's what supports the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency. This is often misunderstood by people where they discuss that the dollar has lost its world reserve currency status or weakened when we got off the gold standard. Well, the dollar hasn't been tied to gold since 1971. In fact, in the mid-70s, the U.S. came to agreements with Saudi Arabia and other oil-producing nations to ensure that oil would be purchased in U.S. dollars, therefore, in effect, securing the dollar as dominant as a world reserve currency. It's often referred to as the petrodollar. So it's the petrodollar that actually determines whether the U.S. dollar will remain dominant as a world reserve currency. This action against Venezuela and Iran further strengthens the U.S. dollar and weakens the BRICS. This action also demonstrates U.S. strength. U.S. military and technology is impressive. No one can deny that. And that discourages bad actors. Somebody who's thinking about doing something like China taking Taiwan, for example, they're going to be far less likely to do that looking at what the U.S. can and has done militarily and technology-wise. For example, when the U.S. went in and took Maduro, the leader of Venezuela, Venezuela had Chinese technology. They knew we were coming, and it just didn't matter. So it demonstrates that you can't stop us, and it puts us in a dominant position. Teddy Roosevelt was famous for stating, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." It's the same type of philosophy. And lastly, I understand I have a reluctance to go to war, as many people do. But we also have to understand that sometimes it is necessary. And as I stated in the beginning, Trump didn't start this war. The Ayatollah Khomeini and the mullahs started this war in 1979, and whether we want to admit it or not, Iran has attacked us at every opportunity. It's just fortunately they haven't had a lot of opportunity, but they've been pushing hard towards creating that nuclear threat, massively increasing missile production, which would have certainly caused them to be a massive threat not only in the Middle East, but to Europe, our allies. And it's also been stated that they weren't too far away from an intercontinental ballistic missile, which could have threatened the U.S. directly. So I've come to the conclusion that I believe this is good for the U.S. It is America first, and it sets up the United States for global economic and military dominance, unlike we've seen since after World War II. It won't quite be at the level of that, but it'd be the next best thing. I've shared this on this show many times. What do I think the short-term economic impact will be on Iran war, other things that are going on? A lot of change, a lot of volatility, a lot of uncertainty. Uncertainty breeds that volatility. But as time goes, I do become more and more bullish or encouraged by what I see going on and where we could in the near future. Some think it could be as early as later this year, might be another year or two. I don't know. But we could be in a position where economically, certainly militarily, we're the world's lone superpower again. It's no question that our leadership and our power had diminished over the past decade or two. We had shown weakness. Other countries had become more bold as a result. And I understand some of this is distasteful and people don't like it, but the reality is there's a lot of evil people in this world, and it's a tough and bad place, and there's some bad actors out there that given half a chance, they would wish us all dead. Or if they had the ability to, they would kill every one of us. We need to understand that as a fact. It's a reality. We're seeing an increase in terrorist activity, for example, in the United States. Why? Quite simply because we allowed people that hate us, hate our society, hate everything we stand for, and we allowed them to live amongst us. The FBI themselves have stated that there's over 11,000 known terrorists that have entered our country in the last 4 or 5 years when we had the open border. Well, folks, that's nothing short of suicidal. The encouraging part is I'm seeing more and more people wake up to that fact and recognize that a society cannot continue like that. And people are waking up to this fact and recognizing that those that should not be here, those that are here illegally, or even those that are here legally but are detrimental to our country, to our society, hate us, would wish us harm. They don't belong here, and we don't have to change the current laws. We have laws on the books that can denaturalize a citizen in a naturalization process and misled or lied or made false statements. Look, we have the right to peaceful protest, but you don't have the right to throw a bomb or pull out a rifle and shoot people or promote that type of thing. So it doesn't matter whether they're a naturalized citizen or an illegal. The laws on the books allow them to be deported. We don't have to put up with this. My hope is more and more people recognize this and we get serious about removing the people that are a threat to us from this country. If you want to learn how to protect yourself, your finances, gain unlimited upside gains with no downside risk, I'm going to share some more about this in some meetings I had with clients recently. So I'm going to encourage you to stay tuned.
Stay tuned for more common sense from Ference. For more information, contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422.
I'm Ference Toth, host of the Your Personal Bank Show. This is the golden era of fixed assets. Annuities and guaranteed lifetime income are paying the best rates in over 40 years. If you looked at annuities over 2 years ago, the numbers have increased significantly. If you own an annuity over 2 years old, the new products can not only pay your penalty to switch, but are often guaranteed to outperform your current product. For more info, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com or 866-268-4422. That's yourpersonalbank.com.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth. Want more information? Contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ference. If you want to reach me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com or the Your Personal Bank app, or you can email me, ference@yourpersonalbank.com. My first name is spelled F-E-R-E-N-C. C as in cat, no E on the end. F-E-R-E-N-C @yourpersonalbank.com. I had some interesting meetings this past week because certainly recent events have caused folks to be concerned. Volatility, as I stated earlier, uncertainty until things hopefully do settle down and get better. But in the meantime, how do you protect the downside? How do you maximize gains while protecting the downside? And especially if you already have accounts like this. One of the things I'm running into quite a lot recently is folks who already have index annuities. This past week, I did a review with some clients that we set up an index annuity with them 3 years ago with the wife. And as we were reviewing the account this past year, her overall return on her index product was 7.9%. Now, by the way, that's one of the lowest returns I've reviewed in the last couple of years. The returns that I've been seeing with my clients have ranged somewhere about 7% overall total returns in their pocket, net of any cost, fees, or anything else. This is real returns. The low side has been about 7%, and the high side has been almost 28% in the last couple of years. actual returns in a 1-year period of time. Now, her husband had a different account set up at a similar time. His average annual returns on his account has been 3%. So you have two people in the same household, both having index annuities, both purchased at roughly the same time. My client has been averaging almost 8%. Husband has been averaging about 3%, so more than double the difference. And as I pointed out with this couple, like I do when folks meet with me, is help them understand the reason why. And this I find quite often is people will say to me, I've got this index product and it hasn't been returning that well. I was promised this or that, or I was expecting something greater. It's just not been doing that well. In most cases, really, truly do not understand why. And it has to go back to the analogy I've been sharing on this show consistently for a while. And the analogy I use is if you want to win a horse race, you have to have a fast horse and a good jockey. Now, the horse is the indexes. There are hundreds of indexes that exist out there. S&P 500, NASDAQ, Russell, Bank of America, USB, Goldman Sachs. That's just a few. We have gold indexes. We have nearly anything you can think of under the sun. And the challenge that agents and advisors have is most of the returns, the performance of these indexes is not public record. It's difficult to obtain, requires a lot of research, and many times it's just unable to find. There's two things that I do for my clients that is game-changing, truly game-changing, and why my clients, for the most part, average 2 to 3 times on most cases, the average annual returns, sometimes even more, 4-fold or more, is because I'm using these two pieces of information, proprietary information, to help maximize index returns. And the first of those is the Index Performance Report. If you met with an agent or an advisor and you discussed an annuity or purchased one, and they were not able to show you the actual 1, 5, 10-year results, performance of the different indexes, that tells you they don't have the information. They're going by educated guess, maybe some past experience, maybe what a marketer or someone else told them they should do, but they don't really know what the performance of these indexes have been. I will show you that. If we do a Zoom call, it doesn't take very long. I tell folks all the time, give me 15 minutes and I will educate you unlike anything you've probably ever seen. And if you have looked into index annuity products or IULs, or you have one, you will then very quickly understand why your particular product is performing well or not. And here's the facts. The old 80-20 rule applies. This Index Performance Report. And again, the software company that they tell me less than 1% of agents and advisors have this software. Earlier in my career, I didn't have this software myself. I was kind of flying blind like most people do. And I'm not picking on the other agents and advisors. I believe most agents and advisors want their clients to do well. I know I certainly have throughout my career, but I haven't always had the tools, the knowledge, or the information at my fingertips to be able to determine which of these indexes were good performers and which were poor performers. And when you see the 1, 5, 10-year actual returns, actual average returns, the highs, the lows, you name it, of all these indexes, it becomes immediately obvious that about 80% of them don't do very well. They're poor performers. Or going back to our analogy of the horse race, they're plow horses, not race horses. Many of them, the majority in fact, average low single digits, 3, 4, 5, some even worse, 2, 3, 4, 5%. Average annual returns past decade. Many of them have never returned more than 3 or 4, maybe 5% ever in any given year. Now, there's no guarantee, while at the same time, about 20% stand out, 10, 12% plus average annual returns, 20, 25, even 28% return in 1 year. Now, we all understand past performance is no guarantee of future results. I get that. But if you're looking at two different indexes and you have one that has really never done much of anything, it's been a poor performer, it's a plow horse. and you're trying to race this thing in a racehorse. Could it do really well this next year? Sure, certainly that's possible. But what's the likelihood of that? Pretty low. We have another one that averages 8, 10, 12% average returns over a decade or longer. 20+% on good years. What's the odds of that strong performer, that racehorse, of winning the race versus the poor performer or the plow horse? Well, obviously the odds are vastly in your favor. That racehorse is going to win the race 9 out of 10 times or more. So why put your money there? Great example is another client I met with where we went over their actual returns over the past 3 years on their indexes on their existing product. And they had 4 different indexes. 2 of them had averaged nothing or negative even, so they had 0 returns. One of the benefits of index annuity products and IULs is with all products, all companies, is the downside is protected. The principal is guaranteed. So you don't lose in a bad year. So that's good news with any product. And also, when you lock in a gain, whatever that gain is, that becomes your new principal. So if the following year is poor or negative, you don't lose the gain from the previous year. One positive, all index products, all companies, you never go backwards. It's, as I call it, a stair-step approach to investing. Each and every year, you either stay the same or go up. You don't have the ups and downs. And by the way, if you compare that to the ups and downs of a direct investment with market risk, you give it 5, 10, or sometimes 15 years. I find in many cases, if not most, the person with the index product has more money than the person invested directly in the market because they did not participate in the down years. This is the part many people miss. It's not just the down year or the loss year that hurts you. But if you lose 10, 20, 30% or more, let's say in a given year, in investment subject to market risk, you not only lose the year you lost, but you also then have to recover from that loss. So for example, if you had a 20% loss down, how long will it take to get back to where you were? A year, 2, 3? It depends. Did you make any money during that recovery time? The answer is no. You're just retracing old ground. You're getting back to where you were. So not only did you lose on the down year, but you lost time on the recovery period of time, however long that took. And I know the argument, some will say, well, many index products don't grow as fast as the direct market investments. And that is partially correct. It goes back to my analogy of the fast horses. If you're in a poor index, like 80% of them are, they are correct. The index product's just not going to compete. It's a plow horse running against a racehorse. But what if you're one of the better indexes? You know, we have indexes that have actually average annual returns of 10 to 12% for a decade plus, with no downside risk on the bad years, and up to 28% returns in 1 year alone recently. Well, you know what? Those types of indexes compete very favorably. And when you compare the numbers to those, actual returns, not hypotheticals, actual returns, net of all costs, fees, you name it, that gets real interesting. Now, the second part of that analogy, the horse, how do you win the horse race? You need a fast horse and a good jockey. The horses are the indexes. We want to pick the best horses, the fastest horses, obviously. But the other part is you need a good jockey. Because you could have a great racehorse, really fast, but that jockey can rein that horse in, can't they? And slow that horse down or speed it up. Which would you rather have? Would you rather have a product that is reining it in? You picked a good index. I'm going to use a quick example. This happened, actual case with a client a few weeks ago. He was in an S&P 500 index. And please understand, there's dozens of them. Not all are equal, but he was in a good one. On his statement, that S&P index, actual returns on the index, the horse, was 32%. The problem was he had a really, really bad jockey, or the product, and it had a 2.8% cap. What does that mean? Well, in that product, the maximum return he could get in a year was 2.8%. So guess what his credit was on his account? 2.8%. I showed him a product with no cap, unlimited upside, no fee. That's always a good thing. And an 85% participation rate. Now, I've got products that have over 100% participation rate, and I'm going to discuss that more in the next segment. But in this example, if he had invested in the exact same index, the same horse, and he had the index product that I was showing him, no cap, no fee, 85% participation rate, his return would have been about 27% in 1 year. And I have had clients get that. He's a new client today because now he understands that he had a great horse. He had a great index, but he had a terrible jockey. So we got him into a product that offered him much more favorable jockeys and allowed him to continue with the same index or the same horse. If you want to learn more information about this and understand how your index product, why it may not be performing, and by the way, 80% of the indexes don't perform very well. So there's an 80% chance that you have a product that's not performing nearly as well as it could. Percentages are higher than that because just like with this one client I referred to, he had a great index, a great horse, but he had a terrible jockey. You need both. And that's why literally over 95% of the people, when I look at their index and index products, they show me statements from the past year, 3, 5, 10 years, whatever. The performance is subpar because they have a poor performing index, because they have a plow horse, a poor performing index, or they have a poor jockey, cap rate fee situation that's reining in the gains that they could be getting. And you need the best combination of both to maximize index returns. Contact me at yourpersonalbank.com for more information. Stay tuned in the next segment. I got a few more things about this and some recent meetings I had that I think you're going to find quite interesting.
Stay tuned for more common sense from Ference. For more information, contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422.
This is Ference, host of the Your Personal Bank Show. Your Personal Bank is a financial concept that allows you to grow your money insured with guarantees, income tax-free, and highly liquid. Also, you have the potential to continue to earn interest on money you invest in other assets, purchase items, or pay expenses. How can you do this? First, invest in a high cash value policy to earn dividends. If you leave money in the policy, it'll grow like any investment, insured with guarantees and tax-free. Second, we establish a bank line of credit using the cash in the policy as collateral. When you access funds, you receive them from the bank. Typically, dividends earned are higher than the interest charged by the bank. You keep the difference. This is known as positive arbitrage. If you want to earn interest on money you spent or invest elsewhere, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com or 866-268-4422 for more info. That's yourpersonalbank.com.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth. Want more information? Contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ference. You can reach me at yourpersonalbank.com or Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. That's my email. It's spelled F-E-R-E-N-C, no E on the end. F-E-R-E-N-C at yourpersonalbank.com, or you can go to the Your Personal Bank app. And yes, you will reach me in any of those ways. I want to finish the thought I had from the last segment. One of these clients I met with this past week, where we were comparing these index strategies, the returns that they were receiving on their existing index annuity product they'd had for the past 3 years. Turns out they were in 4 different index strategies. 2 of them had a negative return, which means their returns were 0. Remember, index annuities, IULs, all products, all companies protect the downside. That is one of the strengths of these products. You don't lose in a bad year. That's a good thing. The principal is guaranteed. When you get a gain, you lock in that gain. It becomes your new principal. So you never go backwards. But 2 of the 4 indexes, the actual returns were negative, so their return was 0. The other 2 indexes, Over the past 3 years, one of them had averaged about 1% and the other had averaged about 2%. Now here's where it got, so therefore their total average return on this index annuity product for the past 3 years was only about 1%. And here's where it got even uglier. They had some rider fees attached to this product. But generally speaking, most riders I'm not a fan of. Why? It's quite simple, because many of them include fees. Fees reduce your returns. She had a lifetime income rider fee on this product, which she really didn't fully understand, had not been explained to her effectively. This is very common, sadly. And she frankly did not want or need. This was a client that had plenty of liquid assets otherwise. She just had this product, these funds, because she wanted some diversification. She wanted some safety. She had the impression that she was going to get some decent returns. Yet if her and I had met and discussed the index performance reports to see what these indexes that she was invested in actually returned, which again were around 0 to 2%, frankly, over the last decade, why would the agent advisor put her into these types of indexes? I think the most likely answer is they just didn't know any better. They didn't have the index performance report software. It's proprietary. The company tells me less than 1% of agents and advisors have access to this information. Most are not even aware of it. So much so, this particular client even called the agent and the company to ask about the index performance reports of the indexes she was invested in. And as she put it, neither had any idea. It was like a deer in headlights. They just didn't know. I showed her products that if she had invested 3 years ago, same time, strong indexes, good horses, strong products, good jockeys, her average return over the past 3 years would have been about 10%, not 1 to 2%. That's a significant difference, but it even gets better than that. See, she had this index annuity product for only 3 years, and it had an early surrender penalty. For her to get out of this particular product cost her 6% penalty. Well, I showed her not only the product that had averaged 4 to 5-fold increased returns past 3 years, had a history of doing that over the past decade plus, so was far more likely to perform far better, but also paid her a 20% signing bonus. Her getting a 20% bonus up front minus her 7% penalty meant she was set 13% up day one. That turbocharges her account, allows her to move farther faster. And by the way, this particular client, age 79. Many people ask me and have the common misconception they think they're too old. I have strong products with strong index returns, strong horses, strong jockeys, up through age 85, folks. Some of the best products out there available. Depending on what state you're in, it does vary some, to be fair. And the other misconception is some people think, well, I should have got in this sooner. Well, that's probably true. It's not a misconception. Index products really shine for folks that are 50 plus. There's tax reasons behind this. And again, I have very, very strong products. Some of the top performers, 10, 11, 12% average annual returns, past decade plus. If you have a penalty to get out of your existing product, 20, and we even have one product that'll pay a 29% bonus, signing bonus up front. So we can totally overcome any penalty that you may have, put you way ahead of the ball game, and have stronger returns most likely going forward. Typically 2-3-fold more, and oftentimes 4 times or better. So if you're age 50 to 85, an index annuity product is a great tool for you. If you're younger than that, well, you might want to look at an IUL, Index Universal Life Products. We have fixed life products that grow insured with guarantees, tax-free, highly liquid. Or if you're an active investor, you want to have access to your money, you're an entrepreneur, real estate investor, those types of folks. Well, that's where the life IULs and the fixed life products really shine. It's about liquidity. And I get asked this all the time. Why do I recommend one versus the other? Well, most of the time, it really has to do with where's the money coming from. And here's another common misconception I want to dispel. If you want guarantees, you have to give up strong returns. Well, that is totally and factually incorrect if you use strong indexes with good products, fast horses, and good jockeys. And not only can you get strong returns with guarantees, oftentimes I find with my clients, competitive or even exceeding what they were getting before, regardless of what they were invested in, whether it was an index product directly in the market or anything else for that matter. And I know that's blasphemy to some people, but I'm looking at actual statements, comparisons over periods of 1, 5, 10. I shared a few weeks ago a client that we did their 19th year review, and the amount of money he has available today, he's retired, is about double than what he was in before, and he had variable products when we first met him. Obviously, he's quite pleased with the results. I'm sharing this information from personal, actual client experiences. I don't go into hyperbole. I don't exaggerate. I'm talking about actual examples. And I debated whether I was going to share this one or not, but I think I will at this point. I had a meeting recently with a competitive advisor, started to discuss some variable products, and started touting 18% annual returns. I'm not going to say those don't exist. I have had clients who have received up to almost 28% return in 1 year also with the guarantees. But as I pointed out to him, that's not consistent. That's not an average, especially if you break it out over a decade or more. There may be a product out there that exists that's had an 18% average annual return for the past decade plus. I haven't seen it. I'm not going to say it doesn't exist, but I will say I've not seen it. I'm not saying this to brag, but I probably look at more statements than most anybody out there. And even if you were getting something like that, you still certainly have risk involved. You're probably sharing pre-fee, not post-fees, so net. You're probably sharing gross, not net. Then he got really quiet. So I have a gut feeling he was touting returns that it might have occurred for a year, 2 or 3, whatever, but certainly not decade plus. And he certainly wasn't including the fees. A return doesn't mean anything unless it's actually credited to your account, right? So don't talk to me about what an index does, this or that, or any investment for that matter. Tell me what gets pocketed, deposited into your account, net of everything. And that's why I'm so much of a fan of, with index products, fan of low or no fee products. Fees just eat into your gains. It's just that simple. And I've seen products with fees of 2, 3, and 4% annually. Well, that just kills you. And yes, there's many index products out there that have caps, but you know what? There's a lot of them that don't. And someone who's knowledgeable and experienced understands the difference. Unfortunately, a lot don't. And without those index performance reports, how would you know? And some people get lulled into the 200 and 300% participation rate products, multi-year typically, where they're invested in 2 or 3 or even 5-year timeframes. Well, I've done the studies. I've seen the studies. I've seen the experience. In most cases, the 2, 3, and 5-year index terms, the returns tend to average out over that time frame, and the 1 years tend to outperform. If that index went up and went up strong, let's say, for a 3-year period, which would be ideal, wouldn't you want 3 100% participations versus 1 3-year 200% participation? The client got it immediately. If the index went up strong, well, you would get 300% in 3 years, 100, 100, 100, right? And you didn't have to wait 3 years to get a return. You would get a return each of the 3 years. And as I point out, when you're done meeting with me after 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe if you got some extra questions, come away with it far more knowledgeable and understand why your product or one you're considering is performing well or why it's performing poorly. And you'll immediately understand how you can obtain a product that has a history of performing strong, 10, 11, 12% per year on average over a decade plus with no downside risk. It's not too good to be true. It actually is what's happening. And I do this every day with clients. And if you want to learn more, you'd like to see some of this in your investments, your portfolio, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com or Ferenc@yourpersonalbank.com, Ferenc, no E on the end. That's my email. It'll be very educational and quite illuminating. Stay tuned in the last segment. I have a few more things to share regarding some bigger picture things with the economy, real estate, etc. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned for more common sense from Ferenc. For more information, contact Ferenc at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422.
Concerned about market risk? I'm Ferenc Toth, host of the Your Personal Bank Show. The S&P 500 valuations are higher than at any time ever recorded in stock market history. This includes 1929 and 1999. We all know what happened afterwards. It wasn't pretty. Elevated valuations increase risk to the downside. Annuities and Your Personal Bank offer unlimited upside with no downside market risk. Your principal is guaranteed. Contact Ferenc at yourpersonalbank.com to maximize returns, reduce market risk, increase liquidity, and reduce taxes.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc Toth. Want more information? Contact Ferenc at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ferenc Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ferenc. If you want to reach me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com or my email, Ferenc at yourpersonalbank.com. That's Ferenc, no E on the end. It's Ferenc at yourpersonalbank.com. You can go to the Your Personal Bank app. Lots of ways to reach me, but yes, you will contact me. I will get back with you. Quick information on the real estate market. It continues to struggle. New homes are continuing to sell below the cost of existing homes. Many builders are spending up to $50,000 per house on buy-down mortgage rates, incentives. This is the first time this has happened as long as records have been kept, which go back to before 1970. This has never happened before, where you can buy a new house cheaper than an existing home in many markets. We are now just shy of 1 million homes for sale in February of 2026. So we're getting back to pre-COVID levels of housing inventory for sale. Much of the reason why home prices have stayed strong is because of the lack of inventory. Well, that has dissipated. Number of houses for sale in February 2026 is triple of what it was in February 2022. So just in 4 years, housing inventory has tripled. That will have an impact on housing prices. Google searches for help with mortgage have just hit the highest levels ever recorded. The levels are more than double today in 2026 than they were in the height of the Great Recession in 2008. People don't Google help with mortgage if they're not having a problem paying for their mortgage, do they? Pending home sales continue to be at record lows. Investors are now starting to sell properties after months of cutting rent. It's happening all over the United States. An example that one of my clients shared with me is she has lowered her rent for 5 months straight. Her property taxes went up 30%. She's now selling. And here's some predictions that I think will likely happen. Currently, no one is really buying homes. There's a lot of reasons behind it. They're still overpriced of what most people can afford. A large number are realizing prices are dropping, so why do you want to catch a falling knife? Approximately only 30% of Americans can afford the average median home, and about 85% of those people already own a home. So you're talking about a very small percentage of people that can afford the average home that don't already have one. So all the sellers are competing for a very small percentage of people. Pending sales are at all-time lows. Sellers are starting to panic. We're seeing drops. I was looking at a house just the other day that was listing for $1.1 million. They've dropped $300,000 in a week. Inventory is now flooding the market. As I stated, it's tripled since 4 years ago. Predictions for the next, let's say, 3 months. Likely more sellers. Unlikely there'll be many more buyers. prices will probably accelerate to the downside. People who bought around 2022 to 24 are going underwater. I've spoken with several of those already where they're 50 and even 100,000 underwater. If you bought a Lennar home at the peak and then you buy one today, you're about $120,000 underwater on the same floor plan. More and more people are owing more than their home is worth. Again, especially if they bought in the last few years. They can't sell it for what they owe. Refinancing makes no sense because interest rates have not really gone down. They're kind of trapped. In about 6 months, I think we're going to start to see some foreclosures. Banks will likely tighten lending more. Builders will probably start backing off, which means they'll lay off more workers. Entire neighborhoods could go up for sale because of the freeze on institutional investors being able to buy homes. Many parts of the country, entire neighborhoods being built by home builders. Most, if not all, the homes in that neighborhood were bought by institutional investors. In about a year, most likely, we'll see a serious price correction in many of the markets that were overpriced, the ones that went up the most, the Sun Belt markets. Banks will be holding more and more in bad mortgages. There's some domino effect into the economy. We saw that in 08-09. Now, I don't know if it's going to be as bad as it was in 08-09. Certainly the reasons are different, but I think we're going to see a significant correction in most parts of the country. Mortgage interest rates are probably not going to come down to significantly low levels like they did after 08-09. That's one thing that's going to be different, and it's going to, I believe, contribute to a slower recovery in the real estate market because one of the reasons why after the 08-09 crash occurred, the interest rates were on the floor. So if you could get a loan, you could get a super low interest rate. That was a great time to buy real estate. Mortgage interest rates are going to be staying on the higher side than they were then, certainly because of the long-term bond yields likely to stay higher because of the federal debt. We didn't have anywhere near the levels of debt 9, 10, 11, 12 like we do now. And the other thing that I have seen few discussing is a large percentage of the homes that are owned today are owned by the baby boomer generation. And I'm not picking on them, it's just a fact. And the other fact is they're getting older. So over the next number of years, there's going to be fewer baby boomers. And the kids who inherit these properties oftentimes are not going to want to keep them or be able to afford to keep them, and they will then sell. And if you inherit a property that you can't afford to keep or you don't want, and the market is down, the prices are down, you're going to sell for what you can get. So I think all these factors are going to contribute to a historic real estate price adjustment. Maybe not as significant as 08-09 was, but I do think longer lasting with a slower recovery. My advice, if you want it, you need to sell a home, do it sooner than later. If you need to buy a home and you're not in a hurry, waiting is probably not going to hurt you none. But I think economic realities are going to come into play, and folks that own homes are counting on the value of those homes. I understand you may not like it, but it's one of the things I share with my clients and prospective clients all the time is when I've got to give them a bit of tough news, I'll ask them, do you want me to tell you what you want to hear or what you need to hear? I'll do it with a smile, but I'd rather tell you the facts so you can make accurate decisions. We're coming up on tax season. Currently, the government receives about $4.9 trillion in total income, all income, tariffs, income tax, payroll tax, you name it. Currently spends about $6.8 trillion. About a quarter of all spending goes to people who don't pay any taxes. Majority, in fact, of those happen to be legal and illegal immigrants. People who have not been here very, very long have not contributed to the system and continue to take from the system. So just a simple little reminder, when you pay your taxes, understand that about a quarter of what you pay is going to support other people who do not contribute into the system much, if at all. And this is why Senate Majority Leader John Thune continuing to hesitate on bringing the Save America Act is so significant. It's not just about voting. It's also about counting people that are here in the census for representation in the House, electoral college votes. It's estimated 20 to 30 of the current representatives in the House of Representatives are representing illegals. And they're making decisions that affect us, our society, our economy, from people that should have no say in that. And ironically, John Thune's home state of South Dakota just passed mandating documentary proof of citizenship for voter registration. His own state is mandating citizenship requirements to vote. Yet he will not get behind the effort to pass that for the nation. And if you add up all the electoral college votes from states that do not require any ID whatsoever, it adds up to 41% of the electoral college, 34 of the 100 Senate seats, and 44% of the House seats. No ID, you can almost win the presidency and have no accountability. And we're literally about the only country in the world that allows that. Even Somalia has more secure elections than the United States. You have to show ID and proof of citizenship. And it shouldn't be this hard to pass the Save America Act that has about 85% approval with all Americans and 95% of Republicans, which is John Thune's constituency. This betrayal by Congress is completely off the charts. We are painfully looking at the reality of taxation without representation, unlike anything we've seen since we were the colonies and had a king and parliament dictating taxes to us. If the Senate does not get their act together and pass the Save America Act and require voter ID and citizen requirements to vote, the response needs to be as strong as it was in 1776. That's my opinion. We have historic opportunities ahead of us. We could be heading to an economic and military global dominance age unlike we've seen since World War II. Or we could be leading to significant chaos with no election integrity. That's a lot of uncertainty. Uncertainty breeds volatility. We have index products that have averaged 10, 11, 12% average returns over the past decade plus. We've seen returns up to nearly 28% in 1 year alone with no downside risk. So if things turn out to work out really well, great, you're going to do awesome. And if they go the other way, well, at least you've protected the downside from the worst of the chaos. Contact me at yourpersonalbank.com for more information. Email me at Ferenc, F-E-R-E-N-C, it's no E, F-E-R-E-N-C, at yourpersonalbank.com. Stay tuned next week for more great information. And as long as it's on our money, in God we trust.
Contact Ferenc at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guests of this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required.
This is Ferenc, host of the Your Personal Bank Show. My show focuses on creating tax-free buckets of money, insured, guaranteed, highly liquid, and the ability to create positive arbitrage. Did you know this is the best time in over 40 years to invest in index annuities? An index annuity allows you to 1. Grow your money safely without market risk. Once gains are locked in, they're guaranteed against future market loss. 2. Double-digit potential upside on good market years with no losses in bad years. Principal is guaranteed. 3. A 7 to 8% fixed interest option is available in the first year. If you're interested in growing your money with potential index-related gains without downside market risk, this is the best time in over 40 years to consider an annuity. If your annuity is over 2 years old, the newer products likely have far superior potential returns. Please contact me at yourpersonalbank.com or 866-268-4422 for more info. That's yourpersonalbank.com.